Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride. We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this shit.
Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Sunday, March 30th. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far today. This is episode 515 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. For those tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe. Of course, appreciate all of those tuning in on all the different audio podcast platforms. And today we've got a lot to discuss around the New York Jets. Darren Mougey spoke earlier this afternoon at the annual league meetings. And we also got some comments via NFL Network from Aaron Glenn. He'll also speak to the media tomorrow, but we got some notes on some comments made by him as well over the weekend. So we will break that all down in today's episode. As always, though, before we begin, we've got to tell you about our podcast partners, starting with our friends over at BetUS, America's favorite online sportsbook. If you want to get in on any of the sports betting action, check out BetUS. Use my link in the description of this video to get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Also, our friends over at SeatGeek. If you're looking for the hottest tickets in sports or the best in entertainment, SeatGeek has it for you. Look for the green dots. Those are the good deals. If you want a ticket for an event, SeatGeek has it. Plays, concerts, shows, not just sporting events. They have it all. And if it's your first time using SeatGeek, use code BUBSONSPORTS for $20 off your purchase and get yourself out to some awesome events. And also our friends over at Huga House. If you want any of their new arrivals or originals, check them out and use code BUBS for 15% off any purchase. You'll get 30% off your second purchase when you use that code on a purchase. So check them out and get yourself some awesome Huga House swag. So here we go, episode 515. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. A little Sunday night episode before another week begins. We officially hit April this week, so another week closer to the NFL draft. We officially hit draft month here in just about 48 hours from now when April 1st rolls around. And I wanted today to break down some comments made by Darren Mougey. The annual league meetings is taking place this weekend and into next week as well. Mougey spoke today. Glenn will speak tomorrow, so we'll have some more takeaways on Glenn, but want to throw some clips out. Wanted to give you some of my takeaways from Mougey because there was some things to note, some things to discuss. I want to just throw this out. Here was a clip from Darren Mougey. We'll open with this before we get into some of the nitty-gritty of what he had to say today. But this was just his overall thought process on free agency, how he thought bringing back not only bringing back Jamien Sherwood, but also bringing in Justin Fields, his thoughts on both those moves and the free agency process as a whole.
Before we get started, just thought I'd give you guys a little kind of review on the free agency plan going into it. You know, one of the priorities going in was to address the quarterback situation really on both sides of the ball. Obviously, we feel good about what we did there with Justin, and then talking about the quarterback on defense, Jamien Sherwood wearing the green dot. It's always nice when you can keep one of your own in free agency, so we're able to do that. And then address some secondary spots, the safety, the corner spot. Feel really good about the players we got. They fit what we're looking for in those positions. Cisco and Stevens at corner. And then kind of just fill in with some value adds throughout, add depth all over the roster. So feel really good about the free agency plan, executing it, and excited to kind of take the next step, really jump into the draft meetings next week with the college staff and prepare for the draft. With that, I'll kind of take any questions.
When you guys evaluated Justin,
So that was Mougey just on the overall free agent plan. No clear surprises there. Just wanted to provide that clip there, right? You bring back Jamin Sherwood, you bring in Justin Fields, you add Andre Sisco. 3 moves that I think all Jets fans were happy about. Brandon Stevens certainly is questionable, and that's a move that is ultimately going to be dictated on what he does on the field with all these moves. But Stevens, especially just given the fact that the amount of money you gave him, even though the contract breakdown is not as bad as it originally looked or how it's spread out, still kind of a questionable contract, questionable move that we'll see how it ends up playing out. Of course, you got to give the benefit of the doubt to this new staff and also Aaron Glenn being a corner, getting the most out of him. And then obviously adding young pieces, which, Mougey talked about today too, was a priority, right? Adding young players, adding depth pieces, adding guys coming off their first contracts to bring them in, try and tap into some untapped potential that they might have, and try and, get that low risk, high reward signing, take a flyer on a guy where he pans out and could potentially play a big role with, some of these depth pieces that coming in, if they could potentially add that to the team. Now, Mougey, and I'll also talk about Glenn here in a little bit, but Mougey, very high on Justin Fields. Here's what he had to say. First comments since, of course, the Fields signing.
You see Justin Fields is, it's only a 2-year contract, obviously, but is kind of the intrigue there, just what maybe there's some untapped ability there that people haven't seen yet?
I do. I do believe that. And we believe Justin is the starter. We believe in Justin. We believe we can win with Justin. So we're excited about Justin's potential.
We believe in Justin. Believe we can win with Justin. Of course, he's going to say that, but look, it's clear Fields when you go through the process, right? And you looked at the different quarterback options. Fields was the most intriguing for that reason. Because he's young, you see some positives, right? His ability to utilize his legs, the athleticism, the speed, all there. One of the best rushing quarterbacks in the NFL. And when you've seen a look around the league at some of these other guys that have gone to new destinations and have panned out, your low risk, it's a high reward, low risk signing where the low risk is he's a bridge for a year and then you find your future guy next season. And the high reward, of course, is maybe you run into your Sam Darnold with the Vikings or your Baker Mayfield with the Buccaneers. And he pans out and can be a long-term fit for this team if Tanner Engstrand and this offensive coaching staff can, of course, improve the passing ability a little bit and can cater the offense to him where he can really break out in a way that we haven't seen him do so far in the first 4 years of his career, 3 years in Chicago, 1 year in Pittsburgh at just 26 years old. Right? We all know what he was able to do last season, right? 4-2 as a starter, 1,106 yards, 66.3 completion percentage, 5 touchdowns, a pick, a 93.9 passer rating, added on 231 rushing yards on 55 carries and 5 touchdowns last year as a starter. So 10 total touchdowns as a starter last season in 6 games with Pittsburgh. He was the top option for the Jets on the market, the most intriguing option. They got it done. And it's obvious that this regime, hopefully, Engstrand and this staff builds around him properly, puts him in the right system, probably that heavy run-first offense, right? We saw a lot of that, and what you see in Baltimore, very similar to what you can kind of predict to see here with the Jets, and of course hope that his passing ability can ultimately take the next big step, because that's the biggest question mark. That's the biggest hole in his game right now. His rushing ability is top of the league. It's the other assets, it's the other areas that he needs to improve in, and we'll see if that happens here. But it's one of those moves where that was the best option, as opposed to throwing an old veteran or even Tyrod out there where you know who he is. At least Fields, you can be intrigued and have that possibility of him taking off and finding a different gear here. While it's unlikely, it's certainly something to look for, of course. Now, one of the biggest things from Mougey that I really want to get into today in what he had to say in this press conference was not moving AVT. Here was Mougey, quick clip, AVT staying at guard.
Is AVT at right tackle a possibility, or is he's a guard?
He's a guard, but we know his flexibility in the past and what he's been able to do for us.
So pretty quick answer there from Mougey, right? He's a guard. There's been some speculation, the last couple weeks into the offseason about how the Jets are going to piece things together on the offensive line, right? You have 4 starters, but the big question was, okay, you don't have Morgan Moses coming back. Do you move AVT to, tackle? And then do you put, do you draft rather a guard in the middle rounds and plug him in at right guard, have AVT at right guard or right tackle, and then, the rest of the offensive line from left to right, obviously Olu, Simpson, and Tittman, or do you keep AVT at right guard and then draft a Membu or an Ozzie Trapilo on day 2 and one of those guys and draft a right tackle and come and compete and be your starting right tackle? And it seems like the direction, right, keeping AVT at right guard, the direction you're heading in is drafting a right tackle, which by this quote, by what Mougey's saying here, gives you a hint that Membu, I think, becomes even more likely now that the AVT to right tackle is sort of out of the equation. And I'll say this, I'm okay with that. I prefer, personally, in my opinion, AVT to stay at right guard. Because I've said this many times on this podcast throughout the offseason. I personally wanted Moses back. I would have tried to sign Moses back to, he got a bigger deal in New England, whatever. But I was on board with bringing Moses back just for the fact that you can have all 5 guys continuity up front, and it's one less hole you have to fill. And that's kind of the approach with AVT. Yes, you still have to fill a hole, but interior-wise, it's kind of to the point where it's working right now, and there's no need to fix it. There's no need to move it around. Like, I'm not personally a big fan of moving AVT to right tackle and then taking away from the strength, one of the strengths of your offensive line, which was the interior last year, and moving AVT out of there and then filling another piece in there and hoping it works. I'm just not a big fan of that personally. I prefer keep everybody in their spot and just bring in a right tackle. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's kind of been the phrase, I think, amongst a lot of Jet fans who stand on the aisle that I stand on, which is keep AVT at right guard because it's been working. It worked last year. There's no need really to move him. Just bring in a right tackle, have that guy play his position, have AVT play that primary position, and keep as much continuity as you can on this offensive line, right? You have 4 guys returning from last year. Simpson, Olu, Tittman, AVT. Keep those 4 guys in those spots and fill right tackle with an outsider. Most likely a draft pick, whether that's day 1 or day 2. And I'll throw some of these numbers up here. Stefan Stilling, who writes for the Jets X Factor on Twitter, LI Jets, posted a really nice graphic that I throw up here on the screen. And I think this encapsulates why it's smart for what the Jets are doing in terms of keeping AVT. So he posted the pressure rates, pass block, and run block grades and efficiency. So AV amongst interior Jets offensive line last year, AVT, Tittman, and Simpson. AVT last season at a 2.75% pressure rate, 5th in the NFL. He had a pass block efficiency of 98.3, 9th. And a run block grade of 76.3, which was 12th. Now, on top of that, you move on over to Tittman. And, of course, these are rankings among guards and centers. So top 10, top 5 in pressure rate, 9th in pass block efficiency, 12th among guards in run block grade. You look at Tittman among centers, 3.44% pressure rate, 13th. A pass block efficiency, 17th at 97.9. And a run block grade, 7th in the NFL at 77.3. You look at Simpson, pressure rate of 3.13%, 9th. Pass block efficiency of 98.2, 10th. And a run block grade of 79.2, 9th. All top 10. Some other notes. AVT and Simpson are the only guard duo ranked in the top 10 in pressure rate and pass block efficiency in the NFL last year. Joe Tittman took a big leap in year 2, ranking among the top 2nd year offensive lineman at his position. I think that just shows you right there keep it the way it is and just add a Membu, a Trapilo, somebody like that at right tackle. And potentially have Olu and let's say a Membu, your two tackles locked up for the next 10 to 15 years, ideally. I'll also throw this out here, right? AVT at the end of the year is looking for a new contract. He is going to be a lot cheaper as a right guard than he is as a tackle. And you've got to put in consideration, Jet fans, everything that the team has to, all the contracts that are coming up. Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner are obviously the two biggest ones. And there's others as well. AVT will be another one. Even looking further down the road, Olu will eventually look. And I know that's further down the road. That's a couple years from now. But if he continues to play like he did before, the season ended, before his season ended last year with the injury, for a franchise left tackle, he's going to look for big bucks. I think you actually do yourself a favor as the Jets by keeping a right guard, because you could be able to get him cheaper next year than if he's going to enter free agency coming off a great season at right tackle. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You want continuity up front. Keep the four guys in the position, go out and bring in a right tackle. That's the smart way to do it, in my opinion. And I wouldn't even throw the injuries out there. I know some Jet fans throw the injury thing out there as well. Like, he's got injured twice while he was playing tackle. Those are just two fluke injuries. Like, he had a tricep injury, then a torn Achilles. Those can happen whether he was playing tackle, guard, center, practice. They could happen anytime. I think it's more so you look at the numbers interior-wise, they were good. They were good as an offensive line as a whole last year. Keep as much of it as you can together, because continuity up front's huge. Don't create unnecessary holes or unnecessary shuffling for no real reason when you can just keep it together in a spot that works. That's the way I see it. Now, on the note of AVT and just the contract stuff as well, which I bring up in the argument, this was Darren Mougey on the Garrett Wilson Sauce extensions. Not a whole lot, but here's what he had to say.
Where are you at with Garrett Wilson in terms of an extension?
In regards to extensions in general, look, there's been a lot of talk about that. We have several players, whether it's early extensions or just players we can extend in the last year, and those are good call it problems to have. But when we're having those discussions, those are good discussions to have. But right now, my focus is on the draft. Once we get through the draft, we'll talk about potential extensions for whoever that might be.
So kind of still kicking the can down the road a bit. At the combine, Mougey, has talked a little about, free agency coming up and a lot of other things. So, extension still not done. Don't expect anything right now. It feels like anytime soon. I think they will lock up Garrett. I do. I think they'll wait on Sauce personally. And I just think that's because I could see Glenn wanting to have a whole year with him where he can kind of mold him into, ideally a little bit of a better ball hawking corner, get some more interceptions, things like that, coming off a year for Sauce, which still a good year for a normal corner, but for Sauce coming off a down year for his standards, I could see a world where Glenn wants a year to work with him, see what he can do with him, and then they potentially extend him next offseason. But look, the markets continue to go up, and it is a little frustrating. You would like them, if they really want to get these moves done, to get these deal done before the market resets, like Stingley just reset the market. If they really had plans on extending Sauce this offseason, you would have liked to get ahead of it. The Jets have always been behind. You would like them to get ahead of it. They kind of really aren't right now. But only time will tell. I still think Garrett will get extended. I don't think Sauce will. I think Garrett will. I also think that's part of keeping Garrett happy. Obviously, last season, the 3 years in it, has not gone as planned. You've heard some trade rumblings, request rumblings out of there. I think that part of it could be to keep him happy, keep him here, would be extending him and getting that done before the 2025 campaign. But the wait continues for the possible extensions of those two players. Mougey also threw this out there about Lazard. Kind of surprising, to be honest, that the situation, he called it, still fluid and they're working through it. It sounds like they actually want to keep Lazard on a restructured contract for the 2025 season, which I'm shocked by. And still, doesn't mean he's on the roster. Who knows? He could still be cut, moved on. But I'm very surprised that Lazard's here. I really am. I'm surprised that he's still here. And I'm also surprised that, that there seems to be some interest from the Jets in keeping him. I personally would just cut bait and move on. But then again, you look at the Jets receiving corps. Do the Jets view this as a situation where it's so depleted behind Garrett? You know, you added Josh Reynolds, but outside of that, it's very depleted. You did add Tyler Johnson. Do you want another veteran in that room plus a draft pick? Maybe that's the way the Jets view it. And, you know, the Jets maybe view it as Garrett, Tyler Johnson, or Josh Reynolds, and then your draft pick, let's say, and Lazard's like your fourth receiver. Maybe that's how they view it. But either way, personally, I would just cut bait. But seems like there's some interest in bringing him back. So we'll see how that all plays out. And also, Mougey mentioned, too, about Josh Myers. Said push Tippmann a little bit in terms of, you know, compete with him at the center spot. I think Tippmann will play center. But interesting quote there as well about Josh Myers, you know. Maybe a little bit of competition there at the center spot. Don't see him starting, but something else of note to just bring up here. Now, I want to move on now to something that Glenn said, and then we'll close things out. Glenn also speaks tomorrow, so we'll have a lot more content there with Glenn at the league meetings. But Glenn met with NFL Network senior national columnist Judy Batista earlier and had some things to say about Fields. Very confident. He said, quote, he has a quiet confidence about him. He can really throw the deep ball really, really well. Obviously, his legs are something that's dynamic, not just in college, but the NFL as well. I think he's ready to break out as a top-notch quarterback, so he's going to do everything he can to be one of the better ones, and we're going to coach our asses off to make sure he does a good job out there. So that was Glenn on Fields. Fired up clearly there for him, similar to Mougey. Who knows? Who knows? We'll see. Ideally, perfect world, Fields is your guy. Worst case, he's a bridge. That's why it was the right move to make for the Jets, considering all the other options. So that was Glenn on Fields. Both of them are high on him in their first time speaking since the move. And Glenn, of course, will speak tomorrow. So let me know what you think in the comments section down below. What are your thoughts on Darren Mougey's comments today? Thoughts on AVT staying at guard? Thoughts on any other comments he made or anything else Jets related? Let me know down below. Love chopping it up with all you in the comment section. Appreciate the support. As always, it means a lot. So we will talk to you soon. Tomorrow we'll be back. Mock Draft Monday. We'll also, of course, discuss Aaron Glenn and his press conference and any other Jets news that is out there. So talk to you then. Until next time, Jets, Jets, Jets.